Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make Kersen Vlaai, or a breaded dough cherry pie. And this is a Dutch recipe, it's a Dutch favourite, and it's usually made in an 11-inch round pan. But I don't have one of those, so I'm going to do it in a 9-inch pan. And I will give you the ingredients for a 9-inch pan. I'm actually making more dough and more filling than I need for mine, but I will divide it out so that I show you only filling the 9-inch pan basically. So you can do this recipe just with a 9-inch cake pan or a sponge pan, something like that, and it will work perfectly fine. So I'll show you that even though I'm actually making more of everything. So I start off by greasing my 9-inch pan like that. You can use some vegetable oil or some butter for that. And then I'll go on to the other ingredients. And for the filling, I have 235 grams. Now remember, although this may look more, I'm telling you the ingredients for the 9-inch version. 235 grams, which is 8 1/4 ounces of pitted cherries from a can. And that can should have light syrup in it. And you will want 200 millilitres, which is half a cup plus a third of a cup of that light syrup. I have 47 grams, which is 1/4 cup minus 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 10 grams, which is 1 tablespoon of potato starch. You could use another thickening agent, but they work at different rates of thickening, so you may have to adjust the amount. But I'm using potato starch. You could use tapioca starch. You could use arrowroot. You could even use cornstarch, but if you use cornstarch, you will end up with a cloudy filling as opposed to a clear filling, hopefully. I have 4 millilitres, about 3/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I have 1 1/3 teaspoons of lemon juice, which is 7 millilitres. So that's for the filling. And for the leavened pie dough, I have 200 grams, which is 1 1/3 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 millilitre cup of plain flour. I have 4 grams, 1 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast. I have 80 millilitres, a third of a cup of milk. I have about 13 grams, 1 tablespoon of caster sugar. I have 20 grams, 1 1/2 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which will be soft by the time I need it. And I have about 30 grams of a beaten egg. Now you can beat an egg, take out 2/3 of it to use, and you can keep the remaining 1/3 to brush over the top if you want. I'm also going to use some breadcrumbs in the bottom of the pie before I put the filling in, just to absorb any excess liquid. So that's all the ingredients, and the first thing I need to do is to create the filling so that that can cool down, ready to be used. I'm going to start off by putting my potato starch into my sugar. And the reason for that is I want to stir it around to get it mixed into the sugar. That will hopefully prevent any lumps from forming as we mix everything together. So I just stir that around to get that starch mixed into the sugar. So then I'm going to pour my syrup and the vanilla and the lemon juice into a saucepan, and I'm going to sprinkle the sugar and starch over that, and I'm just going to give that a bit of a stir around, and then I'm going to bring that to a boil. And as it comes to a boil, you can see that it looks quite cloudy, but it should go clear. And I'm just stirring that to make sure that everything is dissolved. And with that just about boiling, I'm going to put my cherries in as well. And I'm going to let that boil, stirring it for about a minute. And that's good like that. So I'm going to leave that off the heat to cool down, and it will thicken as it cools down basically. And once it's cool, it will be ready to go into our pie. So the next step will be to make our dough, because we then have to let that rest for an hour as well. So to make the dough, I'm going to do this in a stand mixer, but you can do it by hand. And I'm going to put my dry ingredients into the bowl. That's the flour, the sugar and the yeast. And I'm also, I forgot to mention, I'm also going to add in a good pinch of salt, maybe a quarter to a half a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to give those a stir around to get them combined a little bit. Like that. And then I'm going to add in my milk and my egg. And I'm going to mix those together with I'll use the dough hook until they all come together basically. And as you can see, that's just about come together. So I'm going to put my softened butter in, and I'm going to mix that, and I'm going to knead it for about 5 minutes. Then I'll show you what it looks like. So I've kneaded my dough for 5 minutes, and as you can see, it's quite stretchy and it's nice and sort of firm, it's not too sticky. So I'm simply going to take a lightly greased bowl and I'm going to form my dough into a ball like that. And I'm going to put it in my bowl and cover it and leave it in a warm place for about an hour, and it will proof and begin to increase in size. And during that time my filling should cool down as well, and then once that is completely cooled I'll come back and we'll actually roll out the leavened dough, put it in the pan and make our tart. And at that point I'll have my oven preheated to 220 degrees Celsius, 200 Celsius with a fan, 430 Fahrenheit, and that will then be ready to take the pie for baking. I rested my dough for an hour and it proved quite nicely. Now I've divided it to take off the excess that I need, because we're only doing a 9-inch tart or pie. So this is what I need for the 9-inch pie, and this actually weighs just over 300 grams, and I need a little bit of it for some strips to go on the top, so I'll cut a bit off, but I'll have some more excess later. So I'm just going to form that into a ball, and I've put it, as you can see, onto a lightly floured surface, and I'm going to roll it out into a circle as close as I can of about 12 inches in diameter. That will be enough to line my 9-inch cake pan, and I think that's good enough like that basically. So I'm going to roll that up onto my rolling pin, and I'm going to lay it over my pan. I'm going to drop it into the pan, and that's in the pan quite easily, and I'm just pressing it against the sides. I'm going to take a fork at this stage and I'm going to prick it all over the base. And then I'm going to use my rolling pin to roll off the excess like that. And I'm going to leave that to rest for about 10 minutes. So having rested my dough for a little while, I'm going to put my filling into it. And I decided I didn't want to use the breadcrumbs because I didn't want the base. The traditional Dutch way, and I should say this is a Dutch dessert, is not using breadcrumbs, I don't think. So with my filling in like that, what I've done is I've rolled out the remaining pastry and cut it into strips. So I'm going to take the strips and lay them over the pastry, pressing it into the side. just in a sort of crisscross pattern, on a diagonal actually, I think. And that's fairly roughly latticed, and I'm going to take some beaten egg and just gently brush it on. Again, you don't have to do this, but I like to have beaten egg on the top of the tarts and pies. And what I'm also going to do is just sprinkle some sugar over the top, and I'm using demerara sugar, but granulated sugar would be fine. And I'm going to put that into my preheated oven, and I'm going to bake it for about 25 minutes, 25 minutes. And I'll keep an eye on it to make sure that the top doesn't brown too quickly, and if it does I'll cover it with some aluminium foil. But after 25 minutes I'll take it out of the oven and leave it to cool in the pan for at least half an hour, I think. Then I'll gently transfer it to a rack to cool completely, and when it's cooled completely I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the Kersen Vlaai, or the Dutch cherry pie with the leavened dough, for 25 minutes, and it browned quite a lot on the top. I could have covered it with aluminium foil, but I decided not to. And I baked my smaller ones as well, and they baked quite well. So this is what it looks like. Now mine is cool but not completely cooled, so where you can see a little bit of leakage here, that will firm up as it cools completely, I'm sure. But it's baked up nicely, and I've actually been biting into this bit, but you can see it there, and you can see this is a doughy, like bread-like texture, fully cooked through. So I'll have a taste of this. Very, very good. Not overly sweet. Get the lovely fruity flavour from the cherries and from that gelatinous syrup. And it does have that bread-like texture to the dough, which is very, very good indeed. So I hadn't seen this until a couple of weeks ago, and when I saw it I thought, oh, that looks quite interesting. And I know that in Holland they make various types. They make one with apple as well. So I should mention that I made more mixture and more dough than I needed for my 9-inch one, but in my recipe and in the ingredients that I mentioned in the video, that is specific to just a 9-inch version. So if you want to make this using that recipe, it will be on my blog. So that's going to be it for today, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.